Hello, my dear viewers. Today, I have a very special story for you, full of intrigue, unexpected twists and turns, and courtroom denouements. This is the story of Dustin, a simple guy from Texas who came to conquer London with his unique spark and the undeniable charm of a Texas cowboy. His first steps in this global melting pot are marked not only by interactions with a host of strangers, but also by an encounter that could change his life. The entrance of Anna, a woman with indescribable charisma and a mysterious past, sets the beginning of a chain of events full of challenges, laughter, and maybe even love. Are you ready to follow Dustin and Anna on their journey through secrets and discoveries in the heart of London? Then fasten your seatbelts, there's an exciting adventure ahead. Lucky, so lucky. Chapter 1. Dustin stood at the bar door of a swanky hotel in the center of London. He stood and looked around, soaking up the atmosphere of the place and the exoticism of the world around me. It was almost an overwhelming experience for the average guy from Texas to arrive at Heathrow Airport and catch a famous London cab to get to a 5-star hotel. Now he was ready to take his first steps in this global melting pot. Those gathered in the hotel bar epitomized the cosmopolitan, global atmosphere of the entire city. It was a multinational crowd, and different languages could be heard. However, when the figure stopped in the doorway, most of those gathered froze and looked around. In front of them stood an ordinary man of mature years. But it wasn't so much about him as it was about his clothes. Instead of the usual expensive business suit that everyone else was wearing, the figure looked out of place. Dustin noticed the change in the atmosphere in the bar. He saw that eyes suddenly turned in his direction, and the volume of conversation in the room decreased. He smiled slightly, realizing that he was the cause of the change. To say that Dustin looked anachronistic would be an understatement. At 5 feet 9 inches tall, Dustin was by no means an imposing specimen. The fact that he was 70 years old only added to his questioning look. Perhaps it was the big, white, wide-brimmed Stetson cowboy hat, the long-sleeved Ariat shirt, the starched and wrinkled Wrangler jeans, or the heeled ostrich leather cowboy boots. No sooner had Dustin taken 3 steps into the bar than he heard the first question. "Are you really from Texas?" Dustin stopped and grinned widely. "Yes, sir, it is, and I'm damn proud of it." This opened up a veritable floodgate of introductions, handshakes, and new questions. Soon, Dustin found himself with a pint of the best ale at a local bar, and a crowd gathered around him, bombarding him with questions about himself, Texas, and what he was doing in London. Dustin kept smiling, answering questions affably, and taking a few sips of ale along the way. The crowd changed over the next few hours, but the interest in him never waned. Dustin was never short of a pint of ale, and he never once put a penny on the bar to pay for it. The crowd around Dustin was thinning, but as more people came into the bar, the interest in this unusual man continued to draw attention. That changed when another figure entered the bar and stopped to look around. The occupants of the bar, mostly men, turned around as if some mysterious message had been given to them. They all turned to look, including Dustin. In the doorway stood a tall, shapely, and utterly divine woman. She was tall. With her heels, she had to be at least 6 feet tall. Her face was framed by soft blonde curls that cascaded down to her shoulders. She was shapely. The white button-up blouse she wore was tailored to fit her upper body. The transparent material did not hide the outline of the bra that lifted and showed off her cleavage so spectacularly. She was wearing a pleated black skirt that went down her long figure to her knees. She stood in the doorway, legs slightly apart, and looked around the room. It was a long, slow gaze, as if she were evaluating everyone present against some checklist in her mind. Everyone noticed the pause in her gaze when she saw Dustin standing at the bar, with a glass of ale with a cowboy hat pulled up over his head and tucked to his elbow. A soft smile appeared on her face as she made a sudden decision. Almost the entire male entourage in the bar watched as she backed away, heading straight for Dustin, and stopped beside him. Dustin, for his part, watched the entire few seconds with as much interest as any other man in the room. When he saw the woman approaching him, he waited to see what she was going to do. Dustin sipped his ale as the woman approached and stopped beside him. She decided to stand just inside what he would call his personal sphere, the distance most people keep from each other as a sort of buffer zone. She positioned herself just inside Dustin's sphere. He watched her over the rim of his glass. She stopped and waited a few seconds before taking the initiative. "Are you really from Texas?" This question caused laughter and giggles in the small crowd at the bar. A voice came from behind. "You're a little late. He's already answered that question at least a dozen times." The woman identified the source of the comment with her piercing blue eyes, and the voice fell silent and the laughter quickly subsided. There was no doubting that the gaze was on her. She turned to Dustin again. "I'd still like to hear the answer." Dustin set his glass on the counter and turned to face the woman. "Yes, ma'am, I'm from Texas. I'm Dustin Prescott." He saw the look in her eyes soften. "Nice to meet you, Dustin Prescott. I'm Anna Gerhardt." She held out her hand, and Dustin took it firmly. "My respects, ma'am. I don't know much about these parts, but I haven't heard such an accent, even here." Anna smiled back at him. "You're very perceptive, Dustin. I'm not from the UK. I'm from New Zealand. I try to be aware of what's going on around me." Anna looked at the men standing around her. She noticed how they were looking at her, and where their gazes were mostly directed. She didn't mind turning her attention back to Dustin. "Dustin, order me a gin and tonic. I'll be right back. I need to freshen up, if you don't mind." "Of course." She turned and headed across the bar toward the entrance to the restrooms. Every eye in the place watched as she slowly strode across the bar and disappeared. Dustin was no exception. He turned to the bartender. "Get the lady a drink." The bartender nodded and got to work. From behind him, he heard another voice. "Be careful, buddy. It might not be as ladylike as you think." Dustin turned to see who was speaking and saw a tall man in his 30s, dressed in what appeared to Dustin to be an expensive tailored suit. "What makes you say that?" "Experience. I've been traveling and staying in places like this since university. My experience tells me she's working, not playing. She has all the signs of an expensive girl." Dustin raised his eyebrows. "Really? This is my first trip outside the US in my entire life. I'm not very good at this kind of negotiation." The tall Englishman grinned. "Don't worry, friend. Most of us here are well acquainted with this sort of thing. If you want to have a little fun, this is your chance. She's certainly nice enough to be herself and has all qualifications." Dustin chuckled. Several of the men nodded, and Dustin's newfound friend continued. "Let her take the initiative and see what happens. If we sense anything amiss, we'll alert you." "Thank you." Anna returned to the lounge and walked over to the bar, even closer to Dustin than before. She brought her glass to her lips and hesitated. "You wouldn't slip something in my drink and then take advantage of me, would you?" Dustin grinned. "You never know." She looked at him and then took a big sip of gin and tonic. "I think with all these witnesses you can safely bet. What are you doing in London?" Checking the items on my wish list. "Is London on your wish list?" "Among other things." Dustin felt her knee rubbed lightly against his leg through the material of his Wranglers. He sipped his ale, keeping his gaze on her. "Which ones?" "The usual. London, Paris, Bangkok, and a few other specific things. I'm getting old, and I thought it was time to make a change to the list before it was too late." "You don't look so old." "Old enough to be your daddy, I'm sure." This elicited a few chuckles from the group still standing around. At this point, Anna flinched slightly and looked over her shoulder. A swarthy man, Dustin assumed to be of Indonesian descent, suddenly lowered his eyes. Dustin saw the flash in Anna's eyes. "Don't touch the products. This is not a Jakarta market where you can fondle the products before buying." She turned to look at Dustin again. "Does age matter a lot to you?" Dustin shrugged. "Over the years, I have left behind many of my former experiences. Now I am little affected by what people do or say." He saw her smile with the corners of her eyes. "That's what I like about older and wiser men. They've lost a lot of their ego and self-centered arrogance." Dustin didn't answer, preferring to sip his ale and wait. Suddenly, the man Dustin had seen sitting at the far end of the bar approached him. He stepped into the narrow space between Dustin and Anna, coming face to face with her. He paid no attention to Dustin and spoke without any introduction. "Are you free for the evening?" Anna looked up at him. Dustin was watching with what appeared to most of the others to be an amused expression on his face. "What's on your mind?" "An evening of dinner, dancing, and companionship?" Anna looked at the man. He was well dressed, about 170 centimeters tall and a little overweight. It was also obvious that he was more than a little drunk. She smiled, but without the softness in her eyes that Dustin had seen before. "Tell you what, if you can sober up, and if I'm here in 2 hours, come back and we'll see." The man looked at Anna and nodded. "I'm going to go grab a bite to eat and take a shower. I'll change and be back in 2 hours." He turned and walked away. Anna watched him go and giggled slightly. When she turned to look at Dustin, she saw the piercing gaze of his steely gray eyes. How much is this little socialization going to cost? She looked hurt as she answered, "Nothing, of course." "I see. So you enjoy your time here on the house?" She wrinkled her nose slightly and looked a little annoyed. "Does everything have to be a deal?" "I guess that's up to you. Touché." Dustin looked around at the men still huddled around the bar. Most of them were wondering how the man from Texas was going to play out this little drama. Some were pondering how, with luck, they would be able to involve themselves in this scene. Dustin continued. "Is an evening's entertainment on your wish list?" Dustin laughed. "This probably falls under other delights not listed elsewhere." Almost all the other men laughed, and another pint of ale appeared on the bar. Dustin looked at the glass of gin and tonic and nodded to the bartender. Quickly, another drink appeared, and the empty glass was carried away. Anna looked at Dustin almost warily. She had a sudden feeling that this Yankee wasn't as gullible and naive as he seemed. She leaned toward him and put her hand on his waist. "How about you ask me to dinner, and I'll ask you to dance? I'm sure we can come to some sort of understanding." Dustin didn't flinch or shorten the distance between them. His actions seemed to make Anna a little nervous. He glanced over his shoulder at the man who had spoken earlier. "What's your name, friend?" "Reginald." "It's nice to meet you, Reginald. I'm Dustin, but I'm sure you already know that. Tell me, given your experience, what do you have to offer for dinner, dancing, and an evening of conviviality?" All eyes were now on the conversation. Anna looked a little puzzled, but remained silent. "Well, Dustin, given the lady in question and her obvious talents, I would hazard a guess that such an evening would cost between $3,000 and $5,000, depending on the length of the evening." "Will that upper number include all night, say until 10 a.m.? I doubt that can be discussed." Dustin's eyes never took his eyes off Anna. "Well?" Anna leaned back in her chair, surprise reflected in her eyes. "That seems like a fair assessment." Dustin looked at her and smiled. The smile made her slightly uneasy. "Is this proposal just for me, or will it be available to anyone who wants to take it up, or even improve it?" There was a sudden hint of worry on Anna's face. She hesitated before she spoke. I suppose that would suit you." Dustin's eyes seemed to sparkle. "Well, I think I will certainly accept the terms, but I will never prevent you from accepting a more favorable offer to improve your business position. Would any of you gentlemen care to improve upon that offer?" Anna suddenly looked worried. This wasn't the way it usually happened. Behind him, Dustin heard Reginald's voice. "I'd sweeten the offer by another 1,000. A large, swarthy man in an expensive suit suddenly entered the conversation. His thick Middle Eastern accent was hard to decipher, but it soon made itself felt. "I'm offering 10,000 by the end of the weekend." A heavy hand came down on Dustin's shoulder and squeezed it tightly. "And you, my cowboy friend, will join us." Dustin's face broke into a wide grin. He watched Anna, who now looked like a trapped rabbit. "What do you say, Anna? Spend the weekend with me and my friend?" Anna looked stunned. She looked into the eyes of the men around her, and they were all suddenly predatory. She swallowed, but it was hard. Her throat was dry. Suddenly Dustin raised his head and looked at the Arab. "What's your name?" "Ahmad. Ahmad. What if we invite all our new friends? You contribute 10,000 for the basic offer, and everyone who wants to join contributes another 1,000 each." Ahmad glowered. "That sounds like a great idea." Suddenly Anna was seized with a bad feeling. She had gone from negotiating a pleasant dinner, dancing, and companionship to becoming the centerpiece of what might be called a big gang fight. She looked around and almost panicked. The tension in the bar at the possibility of such action had most of the men on alert. Dustin just watched Anna with growing interest. Her fear and frustration only seemed to increase. The look of a trapped rabbit was now more like the look of a deer in headlights just before colliding with a car. He left her for a few moments, taking a sip of the rest of his ale. "Gentlemen, upon reflection, I think I'll take this young lady up on her offer myself. I'll put it down as one of the items on my wish list. I'm sure she'll do it beautifully." There was a general groan, and Ahmad spoke quickly. "I will gladly offer you my services if you will allow me to join you." Dustin seemed to pause and mull over the proposal. Anna watched him carefully. "Ahmad, my new friend. As tempting as the offer was, I regret to have to decline it. Perhaps another time. It's my to-do list, and I'm a bit finicky." Ahmad looked disappointed, but raised his glass in greeting. Dustin turned to Anna, stood up from his seat leaning against the bar, carefully adjusted the Stetson on his head, and extended his hand to Anna. "Shall we go, little lady?" She got up from the bar stool she'd been resting on, slipped her hand into his, and smiled. "I think it will be." Every eye in the bar watched enviously as they passed through the door and disappeared into the lobby. More than once they grinned merrily. The bartender just shook his head and went back to washing glasses. Epilogue. They walked down the lobby hand in hand, not speaking. Everyone was watching them, a cowboy with a beautiful woman in his arms. The security guard standing at the front desk shifted his gaze to them. He had never seen her before, but she had all the signs of one of the expensive girls one might find in a hotel. He didn't like it, but management seemed to turn a blind eye to such practices. Unless there was an obvious problem, he was ordered not to interfere. He suspected that the hotel management was receiving some kind of kickbacks. In the elevator heading to the concierge suite where he was staying, she turned to take his hand and rest her head on his shoulder. He smiled, and turning his head, kissed her lightly on the forehead. As they exited the elevator, they passed the concierge desk. Dustin nodded to the man and received an understanding smile in return. Dustin unlocked the door with his key and let Anna enter first, before stepping inside and securing all the deadbolts, latches, and chains on the door. Turning around, he saw that Anna was looking at him, her eyes brightening and her breathing a little quicker. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of $100 bills, counted out 50, and spread them neatly in a fan on the dressing table in the hotel room. Dustin looked at her with a knowing smirk. "That's what we agreed on. Dinner, dancing, and companionship. Damn it, Daddy. That was the best thing we ever did. Were you really going to let them all buy that joke? That's for me to know and you to find out. But right now, I'm more interested in seeing you smiling." Thus began Dustin and Diana's adventure. The idea was born when Dustin and Diana were lying on a huge iron bed in a dungeon in a boarding house in South Warwickshire. They had ended up there shortly before they were due to go on a trip. Anna was excited by the possibilities and the fantastic concept that Dustin had proposed. He called it a cheating girl. Dustin was originally from Texas, born, raised, and as he liked to say, by the grace of God. Anna was originally from New Zealand, but spent almost all of her adult life in the UK. As a doctor, she had a career in the National Health Service, raised a daughter who was now at university, and was reputedly beautiful. She was also 20 years younger than Dustin. Dustin was 70, in good health, and now single. In his 70s, he had managed to raise a family, pursue a career as a professional firefighter, and become a successful entrepreneur. Shortly before his 69th birthday, he bought a lottery ticket. The winnings totaled just over $1 billion. On his birthday, 3 days before Christmas, he learned that he was the owner of the only winning ticket in the largest state lottery ever held. By the end of January, he had everything in place to claim his winnings. The day after he, his then-wife, children, and grandchildren received the symbolic check in Austin, Texas, his wife of 46 years served him with divorce papers. She had the foresight to wait until the payout was scheduled. Dustin had chosen the annual payout option to maximize the return on his $5 lottery ticket investment. He planned to turn over most of the annual payout to the investment manager, leaving himself only what he saw fit. His wife had fervently insisted on receiving a lump sum of $600 million. Now, he realized why she had been so insistent on an immediate payout rather than an annual income. The lawyer, whose services Dustin used, tried to convince him to fight for a divorce. For his part, Dustin had already decided that he wanted to end the whole situation and move on with his life. The division of property was purely 50-50ths. Getting half of the $14 million each year for 30 years seemed to appease his wife. After 90 days, the deal was finalized, and he walked out of his attorney's office a lonely man after 46 years of life. His 3 children were shocked that their mother had decided to pull such a stunt. He tried to convince them not to hold a grudge and immediately set up a trust for each of his grandchildren with very specific instructions. He also gave each of his children $500,000 and paid taxes on those gifts. After that, he had more than half of his first annual after-tax payout left in his accounts. He put all but $500,000 into an investment manager account and never looked back. The first thing he did, after settling his affairs, depositing most of his personal belongings in storage, or handing them over to his children, and arranging for future retirement income, and lottery winnings to be transferred to several accounts, was to pack the necessary clothes, laptop, tablet and cell phone, and book a one-way first-class ticket to the UK. He was on a mission. Dustin met Anna almost 10 years ago. It was an online friendship that began when she wrote to him on a forum to comment on one of his poems posted there. They started chatting regularly and developed a strong friendship that slowly and almost imperceptibly developed into a romantic relationship. Although they never met physically, there was an attraction and a sense of a much deeper connection between them. The main obstacle was that Anna was married, and her teenage daughter was hesitant to divorce her not-so-best husband. There were also financial considerations. She worked as a doctor in the UK, was well paid, and had all the family responsibilities of raising her daughter. She was dedicated, and Dustin knew she would never leave her daughter in her husband's care. Things had changed over the past few months. Dustin knew that Anna's daughter would be heading off to university in the fall and leaving home to begin her life's journey. The relationship with her husband had deteriorated further, and there was a fear that he might be leaning towards something bad. All of these considerations occupied Dustin as he sat in the airport lounge in Dallas. He had a plan. The only major obstacle was that it was his plan, and he wasn't sharing it with anyone. 18 hours later, he arrived in London. He had never traveled outside the United States before, so he was flying blind. Exiting the airport, he stood in line for a cab, and soon found himself in one of London's ubiquitous cabs. He smiled as he heard the cabbie address him. "Where to go, Chief?" Dustin thought for a few seconds. "Take me to the most beautiful hotel in London." The cab driver nodded, put it in gear, and they were on their way. Dustin kept his eyes on the window the whole way, taking in all the sights as the cab traveled the maze of streets that led to the Pan Pacific Hotel in London. When the cab stopped under a small portico, the doorman got out and opened the door. Dustin stepped out of the cab and held out a brand new black Amex card to the driver. A few seconds later, he received a check and a sincerely grateful handshake after a £50 tip. The bellboy escorted Dustin to the front desk. When Dustin saw that the lobby was bustling with activity, he was afraid that the hotel was completely full. To his relief, the receptionist assured him that they had a few rooms and suites available. A few minutes later, the bellman was already on his way to the room Dustin had chosen, despite its cost. Dustin spent the next week exploring London and taking all the tourist trips he had dreamed of his whole life. He saw the Tower of London, Westminster Abbey, and all the other landmarks. He soon discovered that if he put on jeans, boots, and a cowboy hat, he rarely had to buy a drink at any pub he found. Not only that, he was making new friends and enjoying life immensely. Finally, he decided it was time to put his plan into action. The concierge at the hotel was happy to make inquiries and recommended a lawyer to help Dustin with business matters. After several meetings, the lawyer was somewhat skeptical of what Dustin wanted from him, but agreed to take on the project after the fee negotiations became very favorable to him. A week after their last meeting, the attorney had made some progress. Dustin was ready to start the next part of his plan. As usual, Dustin communicated daily with Anna through one of the chat programs. She still didn't know he was in London. As far as she knew, he was still in Texas, still married and thousands of miles away from her. That was all about to change soon. Dustin packed a small bag with the essentials. With the help of the concierge, he had already made travel arrangements. He took the London subway system to the nearest train station. There he purchased his pre-purchased tickets and was soon comfortably seated in the car. He was on his way to Birmingham. The trip was surprisingly short, no more than 2 hours. When he arrived in Birmingham, he checked into a small B&B he had booked online and set out to familiarize himself with the city. Once oriented, he arranged for an Uber to pick him up. He chatted with the Uber driver and arranged for him to stay with him for the rest of the day, promising a generous tip on top of the standard mileage. The Uber driver didn't seem to mind Dustin's plan. The first stop was at a well-known hospital. Dustin was well aware of Anna's place of work and her schedule. He told the Uber driver to park at the far end of the parking lot. Dustin got out of the car and leisurely strolled through the parking lot and hospital grounds, keeping an eye on the time. At about 3 p.m., Dustin found a spot near the front entrance with a bench and a screen of low bushes. He sat down and watched the front of the hospital. It was almost 3:30 when he saw a tall blonde woman leave the hospital and hurry toward the doctor's parking lot. He didn't approach her, he just watched. He knew she usually went home that day, unless she needed to do some shopping. Dustin hurried back to the Uber car and watched as Anna drove her small Fiat out of the parking space and turned onto the street. He told the Uber driver to keep a close eye on her. He didn't expect her to be suspicious, and his assumptions were correct. They followed her, and soon she turned toward a local food market, parked, and headed inside. The Uber driver did the same, and Dustin jumped out of the car. At the store, Anna filled a shopping cart. She intended to buy ingredients for the dinner she had planned. Dustin took the basket as well and followed her as she shopped. As she turned down an aisle and began to search intently for ingredients, Dustin cautiously approached her from the back. She stopped, looking for something on the shelf in front of her. Dustin stopped, almost touching her back, and reached over her shoulder to grab something from the shelf. She seemed a little disturbed by this intrusion, but simply stepped back a short distance. Dustin looked at the box of pasta in his hand and spoke to someone specific. "I wonder if it would be good with fresh sausage and vegetables." Anna wasn't paying too much attention, but something about the voice she heard made her stop. She didn't want to be intrusive, so she listened for a few seconds, hoping the voice would come again. When the stranger spoke, she was surprised by the question. "Excuse me, have you ever made pasta like this before?" Anna turned to look at the source of the voice behind her. The voice seemed familiar, but it was strange. There was an unusual woodiness to the voice, and the accent was completely out of place. She looked at the box of pasta in the stranger's hands. "No, I don't think I've ever used that brand." When she finished speaking, she looked up at the stranger and saw a wide smile on his tanned face. She didn't understand for a second, until the stranger spoke again. "Thanks for your help. I think you guessed I'm not from around here." Her eyes and mouth went wide. She almost dropped the grocery basket she was holding and her knees went a little weak. Dustin saw the look on her face and grabbed the grocery basket. "Whoa, don't drop your stuff." "Who? How? Oh my God, Dustin, what the hell are you doing here? For groceries." With her free hand, she slapped his chest and he saw her eyes narrow. "Oh, you. Why didn't you tell me you were in the UK? I wanted it to be a surprise." Her hand rested on his chest after the last time she'd pounced on him. Her eyes softened, and then she looked at him incredulously. "Let me get the rest of my things, and then we need to find somewhere more private." "I agree." Eventually, they found themselves in a small coffee shop not far from the market. Sitting across the table from each other, Dustin still said nothing. Anna, on the other hand, was chatting animatedly. "I can't believe you're here. When did you get here? How long will you be here? Where are you staying? Oh my God, I must look like a teenager telling you all this." He smiled and reached out to touch her hand. "I got here a little over 2 weeks ago. I'm here until I finish what I came here for. I have an apartment in London, and I've booked a room in a B&B here for a few days. I like it when you talk. I just want to watch you and listen to you." She blushed. They continued chatting for a few more minutes before Anna remembered his words. "What did you come here for? Catch you." She gasped. "What? You know I'm still married. Even if Diana is at university, I still have commitments at the hospital and clinic." Dustin anticipated her reaction and just smiled. "I know you need to get home and get dinner ready, but I want to give you a little warning. Your husband will have some news for you tonight. Listen to what he has to say. Here's the phone number and the B&B where I'm staying. You go home. Try not to think about it too much. Keep your wits about you and call me when you can." He stood up, leaned over and kissed her lightly on the forehead, then walked out of the cafe. She sat stunned until she could pull herself together and head to her car to go home. Dustin went back to his Uber and asked the driver to return him to the B&B. There he paid the Uber driver and gave a solid tip. The young man smiled broadly, and Dustin watched him drive away. In his room, he made himself comfortable, put his tablet and charger on the small table, and settled down to watch the local TV. He was both excited and a little worried about how the next few hours would go. Across town, in a beautiful detached house, Anna was busy preparing dinner. Her thoughts weren't on the recipe at all. She was completely absorbed in her thoughts, and the surprise she felt when Dustin appeared on the market out of nowhere. His statement that her husband would have news this evening had worried her a little. She and Bert hadn't slept in the same bed since Diana was born. Their relationship had been tumultuous at best, and they had only stayed together because Anna wanted Diana to have a normal family, not a divided one. She couldn't imagine what she should expect, or how Dustin would know what Bert might say. The usual routine awaited her this evening. Bert would come home from work, take a shower, complain about something, then make dinner and retire to his office. It had become so familiar that she didn't expect anything different. She was in for a surprise. Bert walked in as usual, but this time he threw his briefcase and jacket on the couch and went straight through to the kitchen. "We need to talk." Anna had heard this sort of thing before. Usually it was some barb about something she did or didn't do that he expected her to say, reading his mind. Otherwise, it might have been his announcement that he and his teammates were going away for a week, skiing in the Alps or sunbathing on the beach. Either way, she didn't care. Only Dustin's warning kept her attention. She grabbed a glass of wine and sat down at the breakfast table. Bert poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat down as well. "I'm filing for divorce." Lucky, so lucky. Chapter 2. She sighed. She knew that one of the reasons he had stayed was because of her financial support. He was terrible with money and was constantly getting into trouble with the loan sharks and banks. The evidence of his financial failure was the exotic motorcycle in the garage, which he'd only ridden once since he'd bought the damn thing, and his expensive trips with friends. Something must be wrong if he felt he could afford to suddenly become a bachelor. What led to this? "I just think it's time for us to separate. Diana's gone off to university, and we don't have anything in common anymore." How will it work? You know, the divorce laws changed a few years ago. Now everyone gets a no-fault divorce, so there shouldn't be a problem. We keep a separate household as it is, except for the joint account. We keep what belongs to us. Likewise, we can agree on the house. If you want to keep it, you can buy it back from me. Otherwise, we'll sell it and split the proceeds. That's rather sudden. What prompted this decision? I just felt it was time to do what was right for each of us. She was still suspicious. "I don't have the money to buy your half of the house, but I really don't want to sell. I need time to talk to a lawyer and think things over." She saw him nod and smile softly. "I understand, but I'd like to resolve this matter as quickly as possible, if you don't mind." She nodded, and he turned to leave. When he stood up, "If you don't mind, I'm going to have dinner tonight. I may decide to get a hotel room and not come back." She nodded dazedly. She was overwhelmed by emotion again. Finishing her wine, she put away her forgotten dinner and headed for the bedroom. Something was strange. Bert was surprisingly cordial and polite. He lay on her bed and tried to figure out what was going on. When she finally interrupted her musings, she looked at her phone and realized what time it was. She opened the chat app and saw that Dustin was already online. Hello? Hey, princess. You're even more beautiful in person than in the video. She couldn't help but smile. You were right. Bert broke a sensation tonight. Oh? He announced that he was filing for divorce. He was polite and cordial and seemed to have it all figured out. I'm still trying to process it. Really? No sarcastic intentions or reactions? No. In fact, he was quite adamant about it. I got the impression that he had it all ready to go. How are you feeling? I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure it all out. He wants a 50-50 split, including the house. I can't afford to buy him out, but I really don't want to give up my house. What's your schedule for tomorrow? You know I have Fridays off. I have nothing else to do since Diana is at university. Why? I want to spend the whole day with you. Can you do that? The thought made Anna smile. Of course. I got the idea that you planned the schedule with that in mind. Gotcha. She giggled. How will it work? Can you pick me up? Sure. Where and what time? He gave her the address, and they arranged to meet at 9 a.m. For almost another hour, they just chatted about what had happened, how he had gotten to the UK, and his plans. Dustin remained a bit cryptic as to what he was going to do in the near future. The next morning, Anna arrived a few minutes late. Dustin sat on the edge of the stone flower bed and waited for her. When she pulled up, he got into the car. She looked at him. So now what? Let's find something to eat, coffee, and a place where we can talk. She headed to one of her favorite places near the hospital. There, a table outside served pastries and coffee. It was a little chilly, but Dustin insisted. Dustin didn't waste any time. Tell me what Bert said last night. Anna repeated the conversation almost verbatim. Dustin asked if Bert had returned home, and Anna told him that, to her knowledge, Bert had not returned to the house. Dustin nodded. Then I have a confession to make to you about something. Anna listened for a moment. When Dustin started, she was more than concerned. You know how things are at my house. I told you everything that happened. Yes. After I arrived, I did a little sightseeing and then contacted a lawyer. He's been working on my behalf for about a week now. Do what? He made some inquiries for me and arranged the finances. Anna looked a little embarrassed. One of the main tasks I've assigned him is to contact Bert. Anna sighed. Did you communicate with Bert before me? I didn't. My attorney did all of this. Bert has no idea who I am. Why did you have a lawyer contact Bert? I made him an offer. What's the offer? I offered him $1 million to initiate a divorce. Anna sighed. What did he do? You tell me. What did he say to you last night? Everything began to make sense. Anna looked at Dustin slyly. Why did you have to bribe Bert to start the divorce? I told you I came for you. Now she was confused again. Dustin continued. Freeing you is the first step. Once that is done, I want you to come with me. Diana is at university. You'll be able to see her here whenever you want. I want you to come and help me do as many things as possible that I've dreamed of all my life. I don't know how much time I have left, but I want everything I have to be dedicated to you. She was almost crying now. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Oh, Dustin, as wonderful as that sounds, I just don't see how it could work. What's stopping you from doing it? I'm not sure I want to retire. I love being a doctor. And then there's the horse, and I'm not old enough to retire under our system. I need the income to support Diana at the university. Dustin smiled understandingly. My attorney assured me that you have had enough years in the system, but you still have a few years left before you reach retirement age. Your pension will be secure if you can only wait a few years. But I won't have any income at this time. Dustin reached out and took her by the shoulders. You don't need anything. With the lottery payments, my pension, and other investments, you won't need to work. I'm willing to make sure Diane has everything she needs to succeed. I can take care of the horse and buy half the house from Bert. We can settle down here, travel and explore the world, and make the rest of our lives an adventure. Anna was stunned and speechless. Dustin noticed the look on her face. I'll tell you what, I need to get back to London to settle a few more things. Take a week to think about it. If you have any questions, you can call me or chat with me anytime. After a week, you can give me an answer. Fair enough? She nodded. He smiled broadly. Now let's see the sights of Birmingham, have lunch, walk around some more, and have a great dinner. And then we'll see what happens next. A week later, Dustin was sitting in his hotel room waiting for Anna to log in. He knew she still went to the hospital and clinic on regular days. She stayed in touch both by phone and chat. He was sitting in his hotel room with his tablet when she went online. Hello, Dad? Hey, baby girl. How was your day? Terrible. We lost another doctor today. The duty schedule came out, and I was put on it 2 weeks in a row. To top it all off, Bert filed a divorce petition, and I got the notice today. I'm overwhelmed. Just do things in order. The first thing on my list is to find out what you think of my idea. I don't know. To tell you the truth, after what happened at the hospital, it looks tempting. I don't think I could handle being on duty for 2 weeks straight, plus all the other shit that goes on there. Do you really think it's going to work? Of course I do. They chatted for another 2 hours. Finally, Anna begged to leave. Daddy, I'm really tired. Can you give me one more day to work all this out? Sure, tomorrow is Friday, and you don't have to work. Let's chat in the morning when you're rested. Okay, Daddy. I love you even more. Good night. Dustin sat back in his chair and thought. He was pretty sure she was convinced of that. The next day he called her instead of using the tablet to communicate. Hey, good morning, Princess. Did you sleep well? Indeed, much better than in the last few months, I think. You must have made some kind of decision. I guess I do. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life with me? I wouldn't ask you if I wasn't sure. A deep sigh was heard in the receiver. Daddy, I want to be completely with you all the time, in every way. Dustin wanted to jump up and yell loudly but held back. Then I want you to do a couple things for me. Okay, I'll give it a try. Call the hospital and take 2 weeks off. Pack your things and come to London. We'll spend 2 weeks together. We have to get to the next level. Oh, that sounds wonderful. Where should I come? The Pan Pacific Hotel in London. Let me know when you plan to arrive and I will be waiting for you in the lobby. I'll be there tomorrow afternoon. Good girl. The next day, I waited in the lobby at 3 p.m., as agreed. I saw her walk through the front door, followed by a belle who was carrying 2 large suitcases. I moved toward her and saw her smile when she saw me. As I waited for her to cross the lobby, I wrapped my arms around her. She was wearing a beautiful skirt, blouse, and 3-inch heels. It made her almost as tall as me. I enclosed her in my arms and kissed her. I know almost everyone turned around to look, and so began the most fulfilling 2 weeks of my life. We did everything I had dreamed of doing. We visited all the sites, ate out, shopped, and walked around every neighborhood in London. We spent our evenings in our hotel suite, learning everything about each other that you couldn't learn from 5,000 miles away. After 2 weeks, I sat her down in the hotel room and held her hands. She looked troubled when I said those ominous words. We need to talk. Princess, it's time for you to go home. You have a decision to make. You can go back to your life, pick up your practice at the hospital, and we'll carry on as we have for the last few years. I won't say I'll be happy about this decision, but I'll accept it and move on with my life. When you get home, I'll send you a chat with instructions. You will make your choice. She lunged forward and wrapped her arms tightly around my neck. She didn't sob, but when she pulled away to look at me, tear stains appeared on the shoulder of my shirt. Good. This has been the culmination of all my dreams since we first met and became together. I love you. There's no doubt about that. I just have to decide if I'm ready to take that leap. I know. That's why I'm giving you time to think about it and make a decision. That afternoon, I put her on a train going back to Birmingham. I stood on the platform for almost an hour, looking at the track where that train had disappeared. I returned to the hotel, intent on finalizing my plan. The train ride was excruciating. All I could think about was the look in his eyes as he stood on the platform and the train pulled away. Then doubt and then fear overwhelmed me. He was asking me to give up my whole life. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking at the tantalizing blue water below and trying to convince myself to jump. In your mind, you realize that the jump is entirely possible and the water will be wonderful. But taking that step over the edge into the unknown and leaving the safety of solid ground is scary. I thought about it all the way to the station in Birmingham. When I got home, I placed my order in Chinese and left my bags in the entryway. Curled up on the too comfortable couch in my favorite house, I ate noodles with vegetables while my thoughts ran wild. It was almost 9:30 when I heard my phone beep and realized it was a text from Dustin. I opened my phone and started reading. My dear Anna, the last 2 weeks have been the happiest in my memory. You are both beautiful and intelligent. I realized again what we had said so many times. We were made for each other. I only wish we'd known it much sooner. Now you must make a decision. To do this, you must understand what I am proposing. First of all, I intend to leave London in 2 weeks. I very much hope that you will leave with me. If you make that decision, I want you to do a few things. Start taking action in retirement. Do what you need to do to make it a reality. Lock up your home and arrange for someone to check on it and take care of it. Don't worry about expenses. This will be my responsibility. Do the same with your horse. Pack everything you need for 90 days. I will explain all this to you when and if you arrive in London. I plan to travel all over the world. There are places I want to see and experiences I want to have with you. If you decide that this is our destiny, come to London 8 days from today. Plan to arrive late tonight. I want you to wear the black skirt and red blouse we bought at the boutique in Soho. I'll be waiting for you to arrive at the bar. I will leave it there, counting on the fact that, knowing how my brain works and what we discussed late at night, you will behave accordingly. However, if you decide that you cannot decide to make such a drastic change, I will understand. Remember that no matter what you decide, I will always love you. I read and reread this post. It was Friday evening. I had at most 2 more days to deal with my insecurities before I could proceed with his instructions. Oh God, what am I going to do? Dustin spent the weekend wandering around London. As much as he hated big cities, London fascinated him. He found that the British had such a sense of style, pomp, and circumstance that he was drawn back several times to the changing of the guard at Windsor Palace. At night, he wandered the streets, visiting nightclubs and entertainment venues. It surprised him, but he felt 20 years younger. He was always haunted by doubts. He was constantly tormented by doubts. Whether she would return to London or treat his plans as the ravings of a decrepit old man trying to regain his youth. Perhaps she was. Perhaps he had gone completely insane, and what he was experiencing were the waking dreams of a decrepit wreck sitting in some antiseptic nursing station in Texas. If so, he decided, what better way to await the inevitable than to sink into an intoxicating waking dream? Finally, the day came. He had spent most of the day repacking all the things he had bought in London. He had to buy a whole new piece of luggage to carry all that stuff. Together with the concierge at the hotel, we made 2 travel plans. One covered his trip to Texas alone. The other was for 2 people and in a completely different direction. He had no idea which plans would be used and which would be cashed in. Shortly before 3 in the afternoon, Dustin emerged from his hotel room. He was wearing Wrangler jeans, a dark blue Ariat long-sleeve shirt, heeled ostrich leather cowboy boots, and an expensive wide-brimmed Stetson cowboy hat. His target was the hotel bar, located just off the lobby. That, my friends, brings us back to where we started this story. 3 days later, Dustin and Anna boarded a plane to Amsterdam. This was to be the first leg of Dustin's tour. I'm sure he will be traveling around the world with Anna, and that there will be much more along the way than they are planning. Here ends the second part of our story, leaving us in deep reflection. In this conclusion, we will try to penetrate into the essence of the events that influenced the fates of our heroes, Anna and Dustin, and prepare the ground for the continuation of their journey. Anna is faced with a responsible choice that could change her life once and for all. The turmoil caused by her husband's decision to divorce turns out to be just the beginning of a much deeper dive into introspection and rethinking what is really important to her. Dustin's new horizons opened up for her, giving her the opportunity to live a life she had only dreamed of before. Dustin, in turn, is ready to offer Anna not just an alternative to the current state of affairs, but a chance for a new beginning, based on mutual feelings and shared aspirations. His determination and desire to make Anna happy manifests itself not only in a generous offer, but also in subtle gestures of attention and involvement. Behind these events is a profound psychological moment, the fear of the unknown, and the question of whether we value our own happiness enough to take risks for it. Anna and Dustin are faced with a choice between the security of a familiar existence and an uncertainty that promises the fulfillment of their wildest dreams. As a reminder, the full version of this story is already available on our Patreon. Join us to dive into the full version of their amazing journey together, full of love, challenges, and hope for a better future. Thank you for sharing these stories and moments with me. Your attention and support is a true source of inspiration. See you again in stories that make us dream, love, and live life to the fullest.